Hava Patel from the South African National Women's Forum. And now I've got Sister Suhayfa Mahomed, who is a counselor at Islamic Careline, as well as she heads up many empowerment projects, empowerment workshop as well. And at the forefront of the campaign from the Islamic Careline side against highlighting the plight of gender-based violence. So let me welcome Sister Suhayfa. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Suhayfa, and welcome to Inspired Afternoons.
Walaikum salam, and jazakallah for having me on the show today.
Okay, so I read with great interest that you said that there's a link between gender-based violence and autoimmune disease. Please do explain to us this link and how did it come about in terms of the research?
Okay, well, I think the main link that I've discovered is the link between stress. So, somebody who's in an abusive relationship, especially long-term, is going to be experiencing a lot of stress. And that stress often leads to what's known as complex PTSD, which is quite different from normal PTSD. Normal PTSD is just a once-off event, whereas complex PTSD is.
And this is just for all our listeners, the acronym, Sister Suhayfa, is post-traumatic stress disorder.
Disorder, yeah.
So when you say complex, can we just expand upon complex? Because a post-traumatic stress disorder can be triggered, like one of our graphic designer Alia and my producer last week, Wednesday, they witnessed the incident on Xavier Road where there was the shooting on the highway, and they witnessed the whole incident. They seen sadly two occupants from a vehicle had then passed on, and this was in front of them, and that really triggered a reaction in Alia. Till now she's suffering from severe post-traumatic stress disorder. But so that is a once-off incident that triggered something. But when you saying it's complex, what do you mean then? Is it a series of maybe constant exposure to a trigger or an event that leads to the complex post-traumatic stress disorder?
Yes, that's exactly it. So complex PTSD is, continued trauma and abuse on a person. So it often happens to children, but it can also happen to adults, like I said, women in abusive relationships over a long term, especially when they're not getting a lot of outside support. So they're all alone and they're experiencing this consistent trauma and abuse. And it builds up in your system, and it often has symptoms that are, often quite different to what normal PTSD would cause the person. But then the stress obviously leads to inflammation in the gut, and then that would, go on to cause autoimmune diseases very often. And
so basically, what you're saying is then when somebody presents with a type of autoimmune disease, that could have actually stand for something deeper, underlying emotional problem that has then triggered off this autoimmune disease. So you need to actually feel. So if you're treating the autoimmune, look, there's no cure for autoimmune disease, but obviously there's medication that will ease the pain when there's a severe flare-up in that. So it's basically putting a Band-Aid. But if then you go to a psychological or emotional source of it and deal with this, that could definitely eliminate the physical pain and difficulty.
Yes, definitely. So what I would recommend is, first of all, if you're in an abusive relationship, you need to obviously start seeking counseling. So your counselor would then, or your therapist would then help to empower you, to build your self-esteem, and then look at a way forward. So you would either leave the relationship so that you remove yourself from that stressful situation, or else if that's not possible, then find another.
So now what? Often the most difficult thing is reaching out and asking for help for various reasons, even embarrassment, affecting it's your self-esteem that it affects you in terms of admitting that you are in the situation. And it's so for people who are listening and they are victims currently of gender-based violence, and it's over a prolonged time. And sometimes for me, people don't even realize, you know what, I am a victim, or I am in a relationship where I'm abused, be it physical abuse, mental. Because for me, the mental abuse and emotional and verbal abuse uh, goes unnoticed. So as long as there's no physical act of violence, uh, verbal violence and emotional violence is still very real, and can lead to this autoimmune disease becoming prevalent, or is it just physical violence?
No, definitely, definitely. So verbal, emotional, psychological, any kind of abuse is likely to lead to complex PTSD
So
and autoimmune disease.
what is the first step? Is the first step sitting down with somebody that's the perpetrator of whatever type of violence is, and making them aware that your actions, when you get angry or something triggers you off and you say these things to me and you're doing this, it really affects me, and maybe when you're in good mood we're fine and everything's okay, but it's having a profound negative impact on my well-being, on my health, and you need to get help, or how can we get help together to change the situation? Do you first contact the perpetrator, or you then seek outside help? How do you go about doing this?
Okay, I think as a victim, it's not always advisable to approach the perpetrator directly. You know, for one, the person might deny it. They might gaslight you, tell you that you're lying, that you're making it up, that you're mad. And secondly, it could also escalate the violence. So it could actually cause him to, start to become more abusive towards you, because, you're pointing out something that he doesn't want to be aware of. So it isn't always advisable. And yeah, it's actually quite hard sometimes to treat people who are abusive. But the first step, like I said, is obviously for the victim themselves to seek that help and to get that empowerment. So that would be. So even if you're finding even if it's a supportive friend, somebody who you can talk to, somebody who you can trust, something that itself is so helpful.
Yes, so reach out to somebody, even if it's not the first step, a professional counselor, or you don't know where or how to access this. But like you say, somebody that you trust, somebody that you are comfortable enough, and somebody you could reach out to just to do something. Something's got to give, but just so that some form of action can result. That's step number one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So then I suppose if you're not at the place where you can, get professional help, because what we do recommend is that if you are seeking counseling, that you go to a trauma-informed counselor or therapist. So this is somebody who's aware of the effects of trauma and that can, give you counseling that's very specific to that. And what we also recommend is that together with talk therapy, that you seek some sort of somatic therapy as well. So somatic is to deal with the body, because when we experience trauma, it's very often stored in the muscles of our body. So we want to be able to release that trauma, and that's why we use things like what's known as EMDR, which is short for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. There's something else called TRE, which is tension and trauma release exercise. Or you can even do your own inner child work. But the main thing is to be able to incorporate those different types of therapies.
It's very important what you said, and you made a telling point that any trauma you experience, it's etched not only in your memory but in your body's working. So, like you say, it's trapped into your muscles, and that could affect then your physical health. Because I didn't realize that. I know it affects your psyche, it affects your emotion. It's a etched memory, and then it affects how you perceive further relationships or further situations. But you make a very important point that also it's stored. Those negative memories then are stored within our functioning, within our muscles.
Yes, that's exactly what happens.
And that needs to be released as well.
Yes, definitely. And some people actually say that it's better to first release the trauma from your muscles before you actually go on to releasing it from your mind as well. But yeah, it is obviously quite important. And then, obviously, on a more personal level, the person also needs to do things that, release stress, for themselves. So they would obviously, do things like exercise, meditation, journaling, limit the stress on their body by sleeping early, controlling their blood sugar, not doing any strenuous exercise. Yeah. But then obviously it's very difficult, if you still in that stressful situation and your body's still constantly experiencing that abuse, and then to still, work on releasing all of that stress. So like you said, you want to be able to do something about limiting your external stress as well.
So, you've given us pertinent information, and it's loaded and time to process. But so advice, as you said, step number one, seek help, even if it's just through a friend. Then you can go for various treatments and that. And in terms of empowering, so if you have now children who are a meritable age that they are going to be in relationships now, how do we empower them in terms of warning signs for this happening? So for me also, it's one thing being there, but prevention is a very, very important aspect for any relationship. So how do we sit down in how do we educate both our male children as well as our female children in terms of gender-based violence?
Okay, well, for females, I think we need to make them aware of, what the warning signs are of somebody who is abusive. And especially with narcissistic personality disorder, very often it's somebody who comes across as being extremely charming, almost too good to be true. They almost seem like the perfect person. They pay you constant compliments. But then there'll always be like these tiny little warning signs where they'll just snap at you, or they'll put you down in public, or like publicly shame you, or tell you something derogatory. So aside from all the lovey-dovey things, you will get those warning signs as well that will tell you that this person is abusive. So I think just being able to educate them on that and let them know that this is what you need to expect. And in terms of male children, I think that all comes down to their socialization. So it's how you bring them up. It's teaching them to have respect for women, and teaching them about the equality of the sexes, and it's also about giving them good positive role models, because I think that's the most important thing. If they can see that you and your husband have a positive relationship and your husband treats you well, then they'll go up and they'll model that behavior as well in their own relationships. So yeah. So
for the males, like you say, positive role models, and also if a mother finds herself in an abusive relationship and she has sons, I think that also is the way where she can guide them to say, this is not the way that you treat females, you treat your sister, you treat your mother. So in fact, they make an example as well.
Yeah. It's quite hard, when there is a male, when there is a son who's witnessing his father acting in that way, for him to grow up and realize that, this is not the way that things are supposed to be done. And sometimes it's important because very often children get traumatized as well by witnessing violence. So it's important that those children themselves go for therapy and, undo all of those negative core beliefs about the way abuse happens. So that's actually what I would advise, is that you would take them for that counseling.
Absolutely. And how talking about counseling, how important it is, yes, if a mother is in an abusive relationship, how important is it then for counseling to extend towards the children or for the children?
Yeah, like I said, if the children are witnesses to the violence and the abuse, then there is a very strong chance that they could also develop complex PTSD, and that they have been affected by that abuse. And So if that's the case, then it is strongly recommended that those children do go for counseling as well.
And Islamic Careline offers counseling both for adults and children, am I correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And Sister Suhayfa, is it face-to-face, or if somebody is in another province, because Careline is based in Johannesburg, do you do telephonic counseling as well? So somebody in another geographic location or area can contact Careline?
We do.
So,
We do offer telephone.
so sisters out there, if you are in a situation where you are experiencing some kind of abuse and support is limited, or you don't know who to go for help, please do contact Islamic Careline and give them a call, because they will be best placed. They have excellent, dedicated, qualified counselors, social workers, trained counselors as well, to assist you in terms of whatever sphere, because I know, Sister Suhayfa, it's a very comprehensive counseling you offer, because you have access to legal advice, access to the ulama as well, in terms of the counseling you do offer as well at Islamic Careline. So it's a very inclusive, comprehensive counseling counsel offering.
Yeah, that is correct. And you know what? If we do find that the case is beyond our scope, then we can always do a referral, because like I said, when you're dealing with complex PTSD, you do need somebody who's trained in trauma and in other somatic therapies as well. So yeah, we can always do a referral if necessary.
Excellent. Sister Suhayfa, shukran for that advice. It has been absolutely informative for us. And we're so pleased that we have organizations such as the Islamic Careline in our midst, where members of the community can access this type of much needed support, counsel, and advice. Shukran for giving us of your time here on Inspired Afternoons on Salam Media. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Walaikum salam. Jazakallah again for having me on.
It's a pleasure. We're going to go for a short break, and then we're going to be catching up with Merle Dietrichs, and she's from Josie Kids, and we're going to assist parents, those looking for what can we entertain or how to keep your little ones entertained. Josie Kids is a phenomenal resource in everything you need to help your child in growing up. So let's all this after the break.